This is your host and this is my channel, and today we are going to do a video about Zumbi. But wait, let me explain. You see, there was a great Muslim leader from Africa who was captured and sold into slavery in Brazil, but eventually became the leader of the largest community of runaway slaves in the Americas. His name was King Zumbi dos Palmares. He led his people in an epic war against the Portuguese colonial army. He used guerrilla tactics that were so effective they were unheard of in Europe at the time. And he established a society with its own government, laws and flag, where the enslaved could be free. He did all these things while being hunted down by one of the greatest bounty hunters in history. And yet his name would later be stolen by Hollywood to represent flesh-eating cannibals from the dead. So let me tell you the amazing story of Zumbi, the Muslim leader who was distorted by Hollywood's films. But before we begin, please subscribe. It really helps out. Also, just a quick disclaimer. Everything in this video is either common knowledge or cited from academic sources. Nevertheless, I encourage you to do your own research because the narrative has been heavily whitewashed over the years. Okay, so here is our map of the world during Zumbi's lifetime. As you can see, most of Africa is in green because it was unknown to Europeans at the time. However, we know that there were Muslim empires such as the Songhai Empire, which extended as far as modern-day Brazil. We also know that many kingdoms in the Americas had contact with Muslims from West Africa and had converted some of them to Islam. So although we don't know exactly where Zumbi was from, we know that he was Muslim, and most likely from an area of Africa that was known to the Portuguese at the time. Our story begins in the 1630s, when Zumbi was sold into slavery by the Portuguese and transported across the Atlantic Ocean to Brazil. During the journey, his mother passed away and was thrown overboard. When they arrived in Brazil, they were met by slave traders who greeted them with guns and alcohol, thinking they were gods. Little did they know that they were actually African priests who were traveling to convert the natives to Christianity. And so the priests resisted. They refused to drink the alcohol and instead prayed. This moment deeply affected the young Zumbi, who vowed to one day break the chains of slavery. As a child, Zumbi noticed that the Brazilian jungle reminded him of his homeland, so he escaped into it and lived with the natives. At the age of 9, he returned to the settlement and learned the language and customs of the Portuguese. He observed that the slaves were segregated and prohibited from owning property or learning to read. Instead, they were forced to work long hours in the fields growing sugarcane, cocoa, and tobacco. If they tried to run away, they would be caught and punished severely. So Zumbi made a plan. He bought some books from a priest and taught himself how to read and write. He then started a secret underground school for other slaves so they could become literate and practice their religion. Meanwhile, the Portuguese colony was suffering from attacks by two enemies, the Dutch and the runaway slaves. The Dutch wanted to take over the colony, while the slaves wanted to end their oppression. To defend the colony, the Portuguese created a militia force consisting of both Portuguese settlers and slaves. One day, a group of slaves rebelled against their masters and seized control of the city. Although the revolt was eventually crushed, it gave Zumbi an idea. He realized that if the slaves were given better weapons, they could have a chance to fight back. So he went to neighboring settlements and convinced other slaves to join him in creating an independent state free from oppression. Over time, more and more slaves joined him until he had assembled a large army of over 20,000 men. In 1670, Zumbi launched a full-scale attack on the Portuguese, killing many of them and forcing others to flee. The Portuguese were shocked by the ferocity of the attack and realized that they were in danger. They sent out a warning to all European colonies to prepare for war. Zumbi continued to lead his army in successful battles, capturing cities and freeing slaves along the way. He was a brilliant strategist who used hit-and-run tactics, ambushes and disguises to defeat the Portuguese. He also employed advanced weaponry, including muskets, cannons and explosives. Despite their losses, the Portuguese refused to surrender. They hired a man named Manuel Lencap, a renowned hunter from the Philippines, to track down and kill Zumbi. Laik was a skilled warrior who had fought in many battles and had a reputation for being fearless. He was given a large army to help him in his mission, and so began one of the greatest manhunts in history. However, despite Lailac's efforts, he was unable to capture Zumbi. Legend has it that one day Lailac came across a river and saw footprints in the sand that were too small to be Zumbi's. He realized that his enemy was using diversion tactics and decided to follow the tracks. The footprints led him to a cave where he found Zumbi's entire army hiding. Zumbi confronted Leek and challenged him to a one-on-one battle. The two warriors fought fiercely, but in the end Zumbi emerged victorious. Lailac was executed by Zumbi for his crimes against the slaves. After winning the war, Zumbi established the Republic of Palmares, an independent nation located in the Brazilian jungle. It was a utopian society where slavery was abolished and everyone was equal. Zumbi appointed a council of elders to govern the nation and created a constitution that guaranteed freedom and rights to all citizens. The capital city of the Republic was called Mosalim, and within its walls there were schools, hospitals, mosques, markets and homes for all. The people of Quilombo practiced sustainable agriculture, raising crops such as cassava, maize, rice, bananas and sugarcane. They also kept livestock like cows, pigs, chickens and goats. In addition, they had a strong military force that protected the borders of the nation from any potential invaders. The Quilombo people had their own flag, which was a symbol of their independence and sovereignty. It featured 3 horizontal stripes, black, yellow and green, representing unity, wealth and nature respectively. The flag also had a red circle in the middle, which symbolized the sun and the people's determination to rise above oppression. The Quilombos were known for their vibrant culture, which blended African and native Brazilian traditions. They celebrated festivals and ceremonies that honored their ancestors and celebrated their heritage. The Quilombos also had their own language, which was a mixture of various African languages and Portuguese. It allowed the people to communicate effectively and maintain their cultural identity. Despite facing many challenges, the Quilombola people persevered and their nation thrived for many years. Their success inspired other enslaved people in the region and gave hope for a better future. Unfortunately, the Republic of Palmares would eventually be destroyed by the Portuguese colonial army. Many members of the Quilombo lost their lives in the conflict. Zumbi was betrayed by one of his advisors who revealed the location of his village to the Portuguese. When the Portuguese arrived, they set fire to the village and killed many of the inhabitants. Zumbi managed to escape, but was later captured and put on trial for his crimes against the Portuguese crown. He was charged with leading a rebellion and inciting violence against the Portuguese. During the trial, Zumbi defended himself and argued that he was not a criminal but a freedom fighter. However, the Portuguese judge ignored his pleas and sentenced him to death. On February 25, 1697, Zumbi was taken to the town square and executed by a firing squad. His head was cut off and hung from the nearest tree as a warning to other potential rebels. Despite his death, the legacy of Zumbi lives on. He is remembered as a hero who fought against oppression and injustice. His story has inspired generations of people around the world to fight for equality and freedom. In recent times, Zumbi has been portrayed in various works of art, including paintings, sculptures, films, and literature. His image has become a symbol of resistance and resilience. In conclusion, the story of Zumbi the Muslim leader who was distorted by Hollywood's films, is a reminder of the importance of seeking truth in history. Hollywood has a history of distorting historical events and figures to suit their narrative and profit. For example, Hollywood invented the term zombie from West African mythology and used it to portray flesh-eating cannibals from the dead in their films. This distortion has led to a misunderstanding of African cultures and beliefs. In reality, zombies in West African mythology are spirits that possess humans and control their minds and bodies. They are not flesh-eating cannibals. If you want to learn more about real history, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching.